Max, a large German shepherd with a glossy black and tan coat, was enjoying a calm afternoon in the quiet neighborhood he called home. He loved these peaceful days when the sun warmed his fur and the scent of fresh grass filled the air. Today, like many days before, he wandered near the edge of the small park, close to his house, sniffing around, chasing a butterfly, and occasionally barking playfully at a squirrel. But something unusual was happening nearby. Voices, low at first, started rising into sharp tones. Max's ears perked up. He stopped chasing the butterfly and turned his head toward the noise. Down the street, a small crowd was gathering outside the old community center. The usually friendly faces looked tense, some angry, others worried. Max didn't understand why, but the feeling in the air made him uneasy. A few children had been playing near the community center earlier, and an incident had just been reported. A missing child's toy was found torn apart somewhere close. A rumor quickly spread that Max had been the one to destroy the toy. Some townspeople believed Max had been aggressive and were upset, though no one had actually seen what happened. "That dog's dangerous," one man shouted, his voice rising above the others. "He's got to be stopped before someone gets hurt. He's always roaming around, scaring the kids," a woman added, clutching her purse tightly. She glanced nervously at Max, who was still near the park, confused by the sudden hostility. Max, hearing the growing noise, started to feel anxious. He had never hurt anyone. He was protective, sure, and sometimes barked at strangers, but he was loyal to the family that loved him and gentle with the children he had known since they were babies. The crowd grew bigger, their voices louder, and some moved closer to Max's usual path. The dog's instincts told him something was wrong, but he couldn't understand what he had done to cause such anger. "He's coming this way," someone yelled. Max looked around nervously, his eyes wide with fear. He began to back away slowly, trying to find a safe spot. His paws scraped softly against the pavement as he retreated toward the house he called home, the place where his family waited for him. People pushed forward, voices filled with accusations and fear. "Lock him up. He's a menace. Someone do something." But Max only wanted to get away from the noise. He padded toward the familiar porch, ears pinned back tail low. He didn't want to fight, he just wanted to be safe. Inside the house, Max's family heard the commotion. The mother and father exchanged worried looks. Their daughter, barely a year old, sat quietly in a corner, unaware of the tension building outside. "Please, everyone, calm down," the father called out, opening the door just enough to speak to the crowd. "Max isn't dangerous. He's part of our family." The mother added, "He wouldn't hurt anyone, especially not children. Please try to understand." But their words were lost in the growing roar of the angry voices. Some neighbors nodded, others shook their heads in doubt. The crowd's fear was overpowering. Max's breathing grew faster as the crowd pressed in. He glanced back at the baby inside the house. Her tiny face, calm and peaceful despite the chaos, gave him a spark of hope. Yet the crowd showed no signs of backing off. The tension thickened like a storm about to break. What would happen next was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Max needed something, or someone, to change the course of the day before fear turned into tragedy. Max's heart pounded in his chest as the crowd pressed closer. Every step they took seemed heavier, louder, and more threatening. His ears twitched at the angry voices, his eyes darting around for any sign of escape. The street that once felt safe now seemed like a cage closing in on you. People shouted warnings, their voices sharp and urgent. "Watch out, he's going to attack." Someone yelled. Another voice joined in. "He's dangerous. Get in before someone gets hurt." The fear in the crowd was thick, contagious, and Max could feel it soaking into every corner of the neighborhood. Max took a few cautious steps backward, his paws scraping softly against the pavement. His tail lowered in submission, a silent plea for peace. But the crowd did not hear his quiet signals. They saw only a dog surrounded by fear, an animal to be feared and controlled. His instincts screamed at him to run, but where could he go? The angry voices pushed from all sides, and behind him was the safety of his home. the only place where he could find comfort and calm. Slowly, Max began to back toward the porch of the house he loved, his eyes flicking to the windows where his family watched helplessly. The parents tried again to calm the crowd. "Please," the mother said, stepping out onto the porch with open arms. "Max wouldn't hurt anyone. He's been with us for years." "You're mistaken." But the crowd only murmured, skepticism clouding their faces. Some nodded hesitantly, but others raised their fists, yelling louder. "Too late for apologies." One man spat. "That dog's a threat, and we can't take any chances." Max's body tensed. The voices felt like a wave crashing down on him. He lowered himself onto the steps, trying to look smaller, less frightening. But it was no use. The fear in the crowd had transformed into something darker, anger and suspicion. One young woman in the crowd, clutching her child's hand tightly, stared at Max with tears in her eyes. "My son was scared of him last week," she whispered. "I don't want anyone else to get hurt." Max's gaze shifted toward the baby inside the house, the child with soft curls and bright eyes. The little one had begun to stir, sensing the tension without fully understanding it. The baby's innocent presence seemed like a small beacon of light in the dark storm of fear outside. Suddenly, a harsh shout rang out. "Get that dog!" someone ordered, taking a step forward. Several others moved quickly, closing in on Max, trying to corner him against the porch railings. Max's breath hitched, his body coiled, ready to protect himself but unwilling to cause harm. He let out a low growl, warning the crowd to back away. But instead of retreating, the crowd pressed harder, their fear fueling their courage. "Stop, please," the father shouted, stepping down onto the sidewalk, trying to stand between Max and the crowd. "You don't understand him. Max is part of our family. He's never hurt anyone." The crowd hesitated for a moment, unsure. The father's words carried truth and desperation, but the anger and fear were not easily quelled. The tension between the two sides felt like a thin thread stretched taut, ready to snap. Meanwhile, the baby began to crawl toward the front door, her tiny hands reaching out. She had noticed Max's anxiety and, in her pure and fearless way, wanted to comfort him. The crowd's attention shifted briefly to the child, their voices quieting as they watched her move. Max's ears perked up, and for a moment, the hostile crowd faded into the background. The dog's eyes locked with the baby's, a silent connection passing between them. The storm was not over, but something had changed, something only a child's innocence could bring. The crowd held its breath. The next moments would decide what came next, whether fear would consume them all, or whether a tiny hand could change the course of the day. Inside the house, the air was thick with tension. The soft hum of the baby's breathing mixed with the hurried whispers of her parents. The father paced back and forth near the living room window, peering anxiously at the growing crowd outside. The mother cradled the baby gently in her arms, her eyes flickering with worry and hope. "Max isn't like that," she whispered, stroking the baby's soft hair. "He's never hurt anyone. He's gentle, especially with her." She glanced down at the child's innocent face, her tiny fingers curling around her mother's thumb. The baby, barely a year old, looked up with wide, curious eyes. She was too young to understand the angry voices, the fearful faces, or the danger looming just outside the front door. All she knew was that something was different, something urgent, and her tiny body trembled just a little. The mother glanced at the father, who shook his head slowly. "We need to do something," he said quietly. "This crowd, they're scared, but if we don't act fast, Max might get hurt." "What can we do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "They won't listen to us. They're already convinced he's dangerous." At that moment, the baby began to stir in her mother's arms, making soft cooing noises. Her bright eyes locked onto the door, then to the window where Max was just visible outside, looking anxious and trapped. "Look at her," the mother said, her voice steadying. "She's calm. She's not afraid." "Maybe she knows something we don't," the father murmured, watching his daughter intently. The baby squirmed gently, reaching toward the edge of the chair as if wanting to explore. The mother carefully set her down on the floor, watching as the child began to crawl toward the front door. her tiny hands pressed against the cool wood as she pushed it open slowly. "Wait," the mother whispered. "No, honey. Stay here." But the baby was determined. With an innocent curiosity that only a child could have, she moved forward. Her eyes were wide with wonder, and her small fingers reached out as if to say, "It's okay." Outside, the crowd's noise had shifted slightly. Some voices softened when they noticed the baby near the door. Others still shouted, but the sight of the tiny child crawling fearlessly toward the front porch made even the angriest pause. Max noticed her too. His muscles, tense moments before, relaxed just a little. He tilted his head, ears perking up. The dog's deep brown eyes locked with the baby's, and something unspoken passed between them, a bond of trust and understanding. Inside the house, the parents held their breath. They watched as their baby and Max moved toward each other, the angry crowd still looming but momentarily forgotten. "Please," the father said quietly, "let this be the moment that changes everything." Max took a slow step forward, his body low and gentle, careful not to frighten the baby. The baby giggled softly, reaching out to touch his thick fur. Her fingers brushed against his soft coat, and Max responded with a gentle nuzzle, his warm breath brushing her cheek. The crowd outside grew silent. Some people wiped tears from their eyes. Others swallowed hard, realizing that what they had feared was not true. The dog, once seen as a threat, was showing nothing but kindness. The baby, pure and unafraid, was breaking through the walls of fear with her innocent courage. A few neighbors began to speak quietly among themselves, recalling stories of Max's loyal and loving nature. "He saved my boy from a fall last year," one woman said softly. "He's always been gentle with our kids." "We judged too quickly," another admitted, her voice filled with regret. Inside the house, the mother scooped up the baby, hugging her close. Max settled at their feet, calm and content, surrounded by the family who loved him. The moment was fragile but powerful. It was the beginning of something new, a chance for the neighborhood to heal, to understand, and to see beyond fear. The baby's fearless heart had sparked hope in the darkest hour, reminding everyone that sometimes the smallest acts of bravery can change everything. As the baby crawled toward the front door, the crowd outside grew silent in a way that felt almost unnatural. The angry shouts, the fearful whispers, all of it seemed to fade into a hushed stillness. Everyone's attention was captured by the tiny figure moving forward without hesitation. The baby's chubby hands pressed gently against the wooden porch as she inched closer to Max. The dog's eyes, wide with both fear and curiosity, softened as he watched her approach. Max had faced many challenges in his life, but nothing quite like this, nothing quite as pure. People standing just a few feet away held their breath, uncertain whether this innocent act would calm the situation or make it worse. The tension was so thick it felt like the air itself might crack. Then something remarkable happened. Max lowered his head slowly, careful not to startle the baby, and nudged her tiny hand with his wet nose. The baby giggled, a sweet, light sound that floated over the crowd like a melody. She reached up, her fingers brushing against Max's soft fur. For a moment, the world outside seemed to disappear. The angry faces softened, the harsh words stopped, and the crowd watched in stunned silence as the baby and the dog shared a simple, powerful connection. A mother near the front of the crowd wiped a tear from her cheek. "Did you see that?" she whispered to the person beside her. "The baby, she's not scared. And Max, he's calm." Another voice joined in, quieter but no less certain. "Maybe we were wrong." Max's tail twitched gently. He moved closer, settling beside the baby without any sign of aggression. His eyes remained locked on hers, full of trust. The baby laughed again, reaching out to pat his head, her tiny hands gentle as a breeze. Some neighbors began to step forward slowly, their anger dissolving into understanding. "He's just scared, like we all were," one man said softly. "He doesn't want to hurt anyone." "I remember when Max helped me during that storm last year," a woman added, her voice shaking with emotion. "He's always been kind." As the crowd shifted, the mood changed. The fear that had gripped them loosened its hold. People looked at Max not as a threat, but as a creature in need of compassion and patience. Inside the house, the parents watched the scene unfold through the open door. The mother smiled through tears as she picked up the baby and held her close. "You did it, sweetheart," she whispered. "You showed them all the truth." The father stepped outside, his voice calm but firm. "Thank you, everyone," he said. "Max has been a part of this family for years. He's loyal, loving, and protective, especially of our little girl." The crowd nodded, some offering quiet apologies. A few people bent down to pet Max, their hands gentle and kind. Max responded with soft tail wags, sensing that the danger had passed. The baby's courage had shifted the course of the day. What began as a scene filled with fear and anger had turned into a moment of peace and hope. The smallest member of the family had reminded everyone of the power of innocence and kindness. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting warm golden light over the street, neighbors began to disperse, chatting quietly about what they had witnessed. Max stayed close to the family, his protective nature returning now with a new sense of calm. The baby rested in her mother's arms, eyes heavy with sleep but heart full of the love she had shared with Max. In that moment, the family was whole again, and the community had learned an important lesson about fear, trust, and the healing power of a child's simple bravery. The day's events would be remembered for years to come, not for the anger and misunderstanding that had sparked it, but for the unexpected hero who changed everything with nothing more than a smile and a gentle touch. The crowd remained still, caught in a rare, almost magical moment. Max and the baby, two unlikely companions, shared something deeper than words could describe. The baby's soft giggles blended with Max's gentle breath, creating a quiet harmony that seemed to heal the tension lingering in the air. The little girl, still seated on the porch steps, reached out again, her tiny hand brushing over Max's thick fur. Max leaned into the touch, eyes half closed, comforted by her innocence and trust. For the first time all afternoon, the dog looked relaxed, almost happy. Around them, the crowd began to change. Faces that were once tight with worry softened. The harsh lines of anger gave way to surprise and wonder. Many could feel it. Something extraordinary was happening right before their eyes. "Look at him," whispered an older woman, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He's not the monster we thought." A young man nearby nodded slowly. "She's changed everything with just a laugh." The baby's fearless courage became a mirror, reflecting the fears of the crowd back onto themselves. They saw how their panic had clouded their judgment, how quickly fear had turned into misunderstanding. And now, the pure heart of a child was showing them a better way. Max's tail wagged gently as he stayed close to the baby, sensing her calm and loving energy. The bond between them was unspoken but powerful. The crowd's mood shifted from suspicion to empathy, and slowly, people began to step forward, offering soft words and kind gestures. One neighbor, a woman with a soft voice, spoke up. "I remember when Max helped my husband during that terrible storm last winter. He's a loyal dog, always protecting those he loves." Another man added, "I've seen him play with the kids in the park. Never a growl, never a sign of aggression." Voices of support grew louder, drowning out the earlier shouts of fear. The crowd was transforming from a threatening mob into a caring community. The lesson was clear. Fear could be overcome by understanding, and anger could give way to compassion. Inside the house, the parents watched with relief and gratitude. The mother whispered to her husband, "Our baby did what we couldn't." She reminded them who Max really is. The father nodded, his eyes shining with pride. Sometimes it takes the smallest heart to heal the biggest wounds. Outside, Max rested his head gently on the baby's lap, content and peaceful. The baby smiled, her eyes sparkling with joy. It was a moment none of them would forget, a moment that changed everything. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, the crowd slowly began to disperse, their hearts lighter and their minds clearer. People spoke quietly among themselves, sharing stories of Max's kindness and the baby's bravery. The family closed the door behind them, safe once more. Max lay down near the fireplace, exhausted but happy, surrounded by the love of his family. That evening, the neighborhood felt different, closer, kinder. The story of the baby and the German shepherd spread quickly, touching hearts and reminding everyone of the power of innocence and love. What had started as fear and misunderstanding had blossomed into hope and connection. The baby's simple act of trust had broken through the walls of anger and doubt, bringing a community back together. And as Max drifted off to sleep, he knew he was finally home, where he was loved, accepted, and safe. The days following the incident felt different in the neighborhood. The tension that had gripped the streets began to ease, replaced by conversations filled with reflection and understanding. What once was suspicion now transformed into appreciation as neighbors started to see Max in a new light. Some who had been the loudest voices in the angry crowd found themselves searching their memories, recalling moments when Max had been nothing but kind. Mrs. Jenkins, who lived across the street, shared with her husband, "Remember when Max stood guard outside the school during the last snowfall? He stayed by the gate all day, making sure every child was safe." Mr. Torres, a longtime resident, nodded in agreement. "And that time, he helped find my lost cat. I never thanked him properly. I guess I was wrong about him." The stories began to flow like water breaking through a dam. Neighbors who had been quick to judge started opening their hearts, realizing that fear had clouded their judgment. At the local cafe, the conversation was the same. "That baby's courage was something else," said a young woman sipping her coffee. "She reminded us all what love looks like: simple, pure, and fearless." Across the neighborhood park, parents chatted quietly, agreeing that Max had always been a gentle giant, especially with the children. They decided to organize a small gathering, a way to celebrate the bond between Max and the community. Meanwhile, inside the family's home, the parents felt a deep sense of relief. The mother sat with the baby on her lap, gently rocking her while the father cleaned Max's paws after their walk. Max, ever faithful, leaned into the warmth of the family, his eyes soft with gratitude. "We owe her so much," the father said softly. Our daughter, with her innocent bravery, reminded everyone that fear doesn't tell a whole story. The mother smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her baby's face. She didn't know she was doing something big. She was just being herself. Word spread quickly about the baby's role in calming the situation. Local newspapers picked up the story, highlighting the unexpected heroism of the tiny child and the misunderstood dog. People from nearby towns reached out, touched by the tale of compassion and trust. In the days that followed, Max became something of a neighborhood celebrity. Children who had been wary before now approached him with shy smiles, offering pats and gentle words. Even the adults who had doubted him stopped to say hello, their smiles warmer, their steps lighter. One afternoon, the family organized a small picnic in the park. Neighbors gathered with blankets and baskets, sharing food and stories. Max was at the center, wagging his tail happily, surrounded by new friends. The baby crawled through the grass, chasing butterflies and giggling as Max watched over her. The once angry crowd had become a community bound together by understanding. As the sun dipped low, casting a golden glow over the park, the mother looked around at the smiling faces. "This is what we needed," she whispered. "A reminder that love and trust can heal even the deepest wounds." The father nodded, feeling hopeful for the future, and that sometimes the smallest hearts have the biggest power. Max rested his head on the baby's lap, content and safe. The day's events had changed more than just the neighborhood. They had changed hearts. The story of the baby's fearless act and Max's gentle nature continued to inspire others, a shining example of kindness overcoming fear. And in that neighborhood, life returned to peaceful rhythms, with a new spirit of trust and love guiding every step. As the weeks passed, the neighborhood blossomed with a newfound sense of unity. The story of Max and the baby spread far beyond their street, inspiring others to look past fear and embrace compassion. What had begun as a moment of tension transformed into a powerful lesson for everyone. Max, once viewed with suspicion, became a beloved figure. Children laughed as they played around him, feeling safe and comforted by his calm presence. Adults who had been wary before now greeted him with smiles and soft voices. It was as if the entire community had taken a collective breath, releasing the anxiety that had gripped them. The family's home became a gathering place where neighbors came to share stories and laughter. The baby's innocence and bravery remained the heart of these gatherings, a reminder of how simple acts can have deep impacts. The parents watched with pride as their daughter's courage brought people together. One afternoon, the local school invited the family to speak about their experience. The baby, now toddling confidently, sat quietly as her parents shared the story of Max's loyalty and the community's journey from fear to trust. The room was filled with attentive faces, children and adults alike, touched by the message of kindness and understanding. Teachers praised the baby's fearless spirit, calling her a little ambassador of peace. Max sat patiently by her side, his eyes calm and proud. The bond between the dog and the child was no longer a private treasure, but a beacon of hope for many. Neighbors took steps to improve safety and communication in the area, ensuring that misunderstandings like the one that had happened could be avoided. Community meetings were held regularly, fostering open dialogue and stronger connections. The baby's simple act had sparked a movement toward greater empathy. At home, life returned to joyful normalcy. Max and the baby shared countless moments of play and affection. The dog's gentle nature was a constant comfort, and the baby's laughter filled the rooms with warmth. Their connection was a beautiful testament to the power of trust. The parents often reflected on how quickly fear can divide people, and how courage, even from the smallest heart, can heal those divisions. "We never expected this to happen," the mother said softly one evening, "but it changed everything for the better." The father nodded, his gaze steady. It reminded us all that every creature deserves kindness, and every child has the power to teach us. The neighborhood thrived, strengthened by the bonds formed through this shared experience. People reached out to one another more often, and the streets were filled with friendly greetings instead of wary glances. Max, once a symbol of fear, was now a symbol of hope and protection. The baby, once too young to understand the world's complexities, became a symbol of innocence and bravery. Together, they showed everyone the true meaning of family and community. As the sun set each evening, casting warm light over the peaceful street, the family gathered on their porch. Max lay beside the baby, who was now learning to walk, taking her first confident steps under his watchful eyes. The neighborhood had changed, not just because of what happened that day, but because of the kindness that followed. Fear had been replaced by understanding. Anger had been replaced by love. And in the hearts of everyone who witnessed it, the story of the baby and Max lived on, a timeless reminder that even the smallest act of bravery can bring light to the darkest moments. Months had passed since that unforgettable day when fear gave way to hope. The neighborhood had transformed, healing from the anger and misunderstanding that had once threatened to tear it apart. What remained was a legacy, a story of love, trust, and the incredible power of a child's innocence. Max was no longer just the family dog. He had become a guardian, a friend, and a symbol of loyalty for the entire community. His gentle nature was celebrated by young and old alike. On quiet evenings, neighbors would gather at the park, sharing stories of how Max had touched their lives, how his presence had brought comfort during tough times. The baby, now a toddling little explorer, continued to grow surrounded by love and support. Her fearless spirit never faded. Wherever she went, Max was by her side, a steadfast protector and companion. Their bond was unbreakable, a reminder that true friendship transcends words. The parents often watched their daughter with awe and gratitude. They marveled at how her simple act of bravery had sparked a change so profound. She didn't just save Max, the mother said one evening as they tucked their daughter into bed. She saved the heart of this community. Her father smiled, brushing a lock of hair from the child's forehead. She showed us all that love can conquer fear. That's a lesson we'll carry forever. The neighborhood had embraced this lesson wholeheartedly. Annual gatherings were now held in the park, where families, neighbors, and friends came together to celebrate kindness and community. Max was always at the center, happily wagging his tail, enjoying the affection and laughter that filled the air. Local schools invited the family to share their story regularly, inspiring children to be brave, compassionate, and understanding. The baby's courage became a shining example of how even the smallest voices could make a big difference. One day, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with hues of pink and orange, the family took a walk through their neighborhood. The baby toddled ahead, Max close behind, his eyes scanning protectively. Neighbors waved and smiled, a warmth in their greetings that hadn't been there before. A little girl ran up to the baby, offering a flower she'd picked from a nearby garden. The toddler accepted it with a bright smile, her laughter echoing through the street. Max sat quietly, watching, his tail wagging gently. That moment, simple, pure, and filled with joy, captured the spirit of everything that had changed. It was a new beginning born from a day filled with fear and uncertainty. The family knew that life would bring challenges, but they also knew that with love, courage, and community, anything was possible. The baby's fearless heart had left a mark not just on Max, but on every person who had witnessed their story. As they continued their walk, the father looked down at his daughter and Max, feeling a deep sense of peace. "We may never forget what happened," he said softly, "but it's the love we carry forward that matters most." The mother nodded, her eyes shining with hope. "And that love will keep us strong, always." Max let out a contented sigh, settling close to the baby's feet as the evening breeze whispered through the trees. The baby reached down to touch his fur, her fingers warm and gentle. Together, they had taught a community to look beyond fear and see the goodness in one another. They had reminded the world that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change lives forever. And so, the story of the baby and the German Shepherd lived on, a timeless tale of courage, trust, and the healing power of love.